All right, now this last part, we're going to talk about four really big, important Supreme Court cases uh, going forward that set a lot of examples here. Now, the first off we have here is Stu's view, right? We have a Supreme Court justice saying, I wish for the power to declare laws unconstitutional, which is what the judiciary was supposed to do. But there's a problem that a precedent, a ruling hasn't been set. Now, the genie says, why waste this when you can grant it on yourself? So there had to be a court case that existed to give this law. And that court case was called Marbury v. Madison. Um, Basically, Marbury v. Madison, make sure here, nope, that's not it. In Marbury v. Madison, they basically decided that the Supreme Court has a power called judicial review. In other words, if a law comes up, they have the power to look at it and see if it ties to the Constitution or not. If it relates to the Constitution, whether that be implied or enumerated, it stands. If it does not, in their opinion, and that's a very important thing, in their opinion, it won't. Now, the thing that makes this interesting is we've had tons of Supreme Court justices come and go. We've had liberal ones like the Warren Court, which I spent a lot of time on, expanding civil rights, and we've had other ones kind of shrinking your rights. But without judicial review, that would never exist. So Marbury v. Madison is judicial review. It's important because it basically made the Supreme Court able to function and not need a genie. The second court case we're going to go into is McCulloch v. Maryland. Now here I gave you an example here. If you don't want to pay something to someone, sue them. That's what I've always said. Background in 1816, the Second Bank of U.S. was created. Maryland had a law that enforced a tax on any form of money not chartered. And so basically what's going on here, and there's a video you can link on to this there. And in McCulloch v. Maryland, this is the first time they used, go ahead and put your quotation marks up there, necessary and proper. Basically, Maryland said, we don't need another national bank, and the other one said, yes, you do. The Supreme Court sided with Mr. McCulloch and said, yeah, you do. So we have another thing here going forward, and this is the implied powers of the necessary and proper. And so this basically said to the Supreme Court, if you can loosely relate it in an implied manner to the Constitution, that's fine. And so that has happened from time and time again as necessary and proper. If it's not written in the Constitution, it's up to them to decide amongst those 9 people. That's a vast amount of power to understand. And sometimes it goes okay, and sometimes it goes south. But that's what happens in our government, all right? The third court case is called Gibbons v. Ogden. And so here's what happened in Gibbons v. Ogden. It's about steamboats. What the heck is a steamboat? This is a steamboat, okay? And so we have 2 companies here, one by Mr. Gibbons, one by Mr. Ogden. And look what it says. Get out, New York gave me exclusive rights to operate steamships in New York waters. Other one said wrong. New York gave the United States the exclusive right to regulate interstate commerce. And so the question is, who has the right? The state or the federal government? Which one is more powerful? Now I like to call this one the Who's Your Daddy court case. And so here we have this. So which one has more power in the Who's Your Daddy, the federal or the state? Well, duh, the federal. So anytime there is something involved, and it involves a state or the federal government, guess who's going to win out? The federal government. Hence, who's your daddy? All right? I mean, you can just kind of envision the United States showing up and going, who's your daddy? And it's kind of creepy, I know, but you can kind of roll with it, right? So, again, Gibbons versus Ogden is federal versus state. Remember, federal is the daddy, state is the son. And so the federal will always win out. And in fact, that actually works, right? Federal, F, father, F, state, and son have an S. So just remember that kind of going forward. Now, the last court case I want to talk about is the Charles River Bridge and the Warren Bridge. Now, these 2 things actually exist. This lovely monstrosity here going from Boston to Cambridge is called the Charles River Bridge. Now, running right alongside it, see here? This is called the Warren Bridge. Now, the problem is we're becoming a big industrial country at this time, and Mr. Charles said, you, state of Massachusetts, gave us the right to build a bridge. And they said, yes, absolutely. And then why'd you give Mr. Warren the right? They basically wanted to monopolize and be, the toll takers, the trolls of you don't come to Boston unless going for me. Now this is the first time, really kind of early on, we see that they don't like monopolies, and then eventually they'll go to monopolies. Basically, they decided that if something is in the interest of the public good, hence 2 bridges to allow more traffic going and coming from Boston and Cambridge, we're going to allow it. So if something's in the good, it really doesn't matter if we have a contract with you or not. We have that there. Now, the 2 objectives I want you to get out of this one, I want you to describe the importance of judicial review. Remember, going back to that Genie, why is it important that the Supreme Court is able to look at a law and decide if it's constitutional or not? And then also number 5 here, what is the potential cause of danger between federal and state governments? Now, I'm kind of setting you up here. There was a civil war fought about this. The federal government said that you can't own slaves, and the South said, well, we think we can. That was not the only issue. There were many states' rights there, and it's called the war between the states, and it's because of many states' rights. But the biggest one, of course, that people want to remember is slavery. And so that's maybe a potential thing going on. All right?